Welcome to RECO12. My name is Justin, and I am a child of an all-loving and all-powerful God and a recovering addict, and am blessed to be the host of this meeting and podcast. RECO12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addictions of all kinds and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking this path. We come together from all places, faiths, and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others who are walking this similar path. Speakers from our past meetings have represented so many fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, and we look forward to continuing to add to the diversity of speakers and backgrounds. Today's speaker for the 174th meeting is Josh W., who will be speaking on his experience, strength, and hope in regards to embracing the process and not just the outcome. We'll get to his talk and the Q&A afterwards here in just a minute. First, for a little bit of business. The RECO12 family of recovery resources continues to grow and have more and more resources for the addict and the loved ones of those addicted. You should be aware of RECO12 shares, and if not, go check it out and record a share and hear other shares there. We are also recording 2 more podcasts, the RECO12 Big Book Roundtable, as well as RECO12 Presents Noodle It Out with Nikki. Both of these will be launching the week of July 24th. And if that's not enough, RECO12 is adding another regular speaker meeting that will happen every other week, starting July 26th, and will be the launch date of that live speaker meeting. It will record at a time that is more conducive to our European, Asian, and African listeners, and will allow you to more easily attend that live meeting. It starts at 9 a.m. GMT, and it'll be hosted by a past guest speaker of RECO12, Karen A. in Israel. I'm super excited about all of these resources and more to come. Your donations and subscriptions are making this all possible, as there are costs to build and maintain all of them. On that note, RECO12 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our 12th step in this manner. I want to thank a few of our spearheads and donors. Thank you, Marietta, Emma, and Emma Jean for your monthly spearhead support. If others would like to become a spearhead and support RECO12 in our mission, please consider going to RECO12.com/support. That's RECO12.com/support, and make either a one-time donation or become a monthly spearhead donor. We look forward each week and each meeting to receive from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth in us, the listening audience. Now I'll introduce today's guest speaker for today. It's Josh W. Here's a little bit about Josh. Josh is a grateful sex addict working his recovery. He's been sober since June 19th of 2014, a great day. My sobriety date is exactly 1 year later to the day. He found recovery in the synergistic relationship between therapy and the 12 steps, as well as the grace and forgiveness he received from his wife and his God. He started attending SA for 2 years and then was introduced to SAL and has been attending SAL 12-step for over 7 years. As part of his recovery journey, he felt called by God to share his experience, strength, and hope. He did so in group meetings, church, as a sponsor, but felt God's call for more. As a result, he went back to school and left a career of 15 years in pursuit of becoming a clinical mental health counselor, a CMHC. He is now working at the clinic where he started his recovery journey, called Circles of Grace, which is formerly Lifestar in Salt Lake City, Utah. Take it away, Josh. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Justin. Excited to be here. I just had a quick thought I wanted to start with on our sobriety date, since we share that. In my recovery efforts in trying to become sober, I always set goals of trying to be sober on like a certain day or holiday or birthday or whatever, and failed countless times on that. And so it just so happened that my wife caught me June 18th, 2014. And that week I had to do a full disclosure, and I hadn't had a act out or slip up since June 19th, 2014. And so I was disappointed that it wasn't on like a special day or event or whatever. And then fast forward years later, now Juneteenth is kind of a national holiday. And so for me, that was just kind of a love note from God. They're like, hey, I know you needed like a special day or something significant. And here's Juneteenth, a day that we celebrate, freedom from slavery. But addiction, if nothing else, is, you're a slave to it. So anyways, just wanted to share that. But yeah, so excited to be here and talk about embracing the process and not just the outcome or the destination. So often we feel like life is a race, or things we're trying to do is a race, and we're just trying to do our checklist and our to-do list just to get to that end goal. But then as soon as we finish, at least in my case, as soon as I finish, I'm just looking for the next goal, the next finish line, and I don't take the time to enjoy the journey. And so in the beginning of my recovery, I remember thinking about 6 months, maybe 9 months in, like, when do I get back to normal, quote unquote, living my life the way I want to, type of thing. And I had a friend and a therapist both say, do you remember what your life was like 6 to 9 months ago? Like, you were not in a good spot. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. I guess I don't want to get back to that life. And so I learned a kind of the goal of recovery for me has been a fundamental change in behavior and attitude. And so there's nothing that I was going to get back to. It was about changing things and being different and being better. And then when I embraced that, I was like, sweet, I want to do a 180. I want to be there tomorrow. How can I do that? Right? What's the magic formula, pill? How do I make that work? So I am OCD, and so I am rigid. And so that was a really difficult thing for me to just learn that principle of surrender. But I also feel like that principle of surrender saved my life, because that was the only thing that let me turn to God and rely on God, and be able to be okay with the process instead of just focus so much on the outcome. And one of my favorite things about attending 12-step for me is I could see people that were in my same boat. I could see people that were behind me, and I could see people that were ahead of me. And I gained experience, strength, and hope, and wisdom from all of them. Seeing people that were the newcomers behind me, it was sobering to kind of hear their experience and where they're at. I remember feeling that desperation of just needing recovery so bad, and then being able to reach out to them and take solace in where I was at, but then also knowing I still had a lot of work to do and a lot of growth. And so looking ahead to other people that have done it and kind of gone that way before. So it was great in the meetings where people are coming that had 10, 15 years of sobriety, and they were still coming to meetings because obviously it was working for them. And so, one of the things I want to kind of compare it to is how we can kind of slow down the process, how we can kind of be okay with just enjoying the process. As we say, when we're passing out chips, that we work the program a day at a time. But we do like to celebrate certain milestones. And I think that's key, that we do celebrate the milestones. We do want to celebrate some of the destinations that we have. But we also have to be grateful for the journey. So just because I get a 1-year chip doesn't mean I've arrived and I'm good and I can just sit back and relax. No, that's a great milestone. And what can I do to continue in my process to honor that 1 year for myself? And so I kind of liken it to changing your vantage point. Because as we learn and grow, we discover new things. A quote that I really like from Maya Angelou is, she says, when I knew better, I did better. And so in my recovery journey, when I would learn something or know better, I initially would shame myself that I didn't know this before, or that I wasn't already doing this. And that was really unfair, because I was judging my past self on new information. And again, that was part of the surrender process where I had to be kind and loving and have some self-compassion on myself. But knowing that there's always potential for growth, and I always am kind of shifting my vantage point and seeing new things, having light bulb moments, having big shifts. So, in your mind's eye, if you can just think that if the only way you see the sunrise is from a certain window in your house, and that's the only way you see the sunrise, it may be really nice and you may enjoy it, but eventually it'll kind of get old or boring over time because it just looks the same. And you're like, yeah, I know what it is. I don't really care that much. Sometimes there's clouds, sometimes there's not, no big deal. But if we can shift our vantage point where we see the sunrise from a lake coming up over the lake, or we see it coming up over the ocean, or we see it coming up over trees and shining through trees, we get kind of a new appreciation for it, but it's still the same sunrise. It's still the same sun. Our vantage point is just shifted. And so I think that's an important part in our recovery journey. And part of that is how we use kind of measuring sticks, right? So one of my goals in coming into 12 steps is I need to get sober. Like I have to do that in order to keep my sanity, in order to keep my marriage. And so that was a huge goal. And part of me thought if I just get sober, then I've done everything I need to do. That was kind of my destination or my arrival or the finish line. And thank goodness I realized that wasn't the absolute destination piece. And reading Roy K's story really helped with that, where he had a couple of years of sobriety and he still had a super hard time in his marriage and in his own life. And he realized, I'm holding on to these spiritual maladies and these character defects that I have to get rid of in order to really step into recovery and have a new way of life. And so sobriety is a great milestone and a great measuring stick, but I would argue it's not the only one. There's other measuring sticks that we need to take a look at. For example, how is my attitude? How are my behaviors? How are my responses to different stresses and life events? And that's all important things that we need to continue to work on to live a more optimal life. I think that's the goal or the point of recovery and part of the 12-step program. And two things that really shifted for me as I started to learn to embrace the journey and not just focus on the destination is these two vantage points shifted for me. Again, kind of with my OCD, it was kind of all or nothing thinking, which is kind of addict thinking as well, but times 10 with OCD, it makes it a little bit more problematic. I was able to shift my perspective after hearing somebody talk and being able to relate this in my own life. He talked about how at the end of his sentences, he always puts yet on there. So I don't have enough, or I don't have that boat yet, or I don't have the savings yet, or I haven't been to that vacation spot yet. Where before, if you just say, I'm not going to that vacation spot, or I'm not going to have that money, or I'm not going to have that boat, or I'm not going to have recovery, or I'm not going to have sobriety, whatever it may be, that seems pretty finite. And there's not much hope there. But if we just put yet on the end of it, then at least there's some hope. There's a window of possibility. And then the other thing for me too is in my recovery journey, I had a hard time with God. I had a hard time loving myself. I had a hard time loving God or trusting God. And so a big part of my recovery journey was learning to step into God a little bit more. And for me, my viewpoint was kind of the all or nothing thinking, that he was either a weak, pathetic God and he wouldn't remove this defect or this problem for me, and so he must not really care or love me, or he was just a mean, condemning God, and everything I did was wrong, and he would just scold me and yell at me and send me to my room type of feeling. And so I went to a couple men's retreats early on in my recovery, and they were centered on God and kind of looking at God in a different perspective. And so what I learned and what I felt is God is actually neither one of those for me. He's actually a kind, loving God. He's actually a warrior God, that he's fighting for my soul. He's fighting for my heart. I just had to be in a place to see that and accept that. And that was part of my journey, is being able to be open to that and accept that. Resentment was a huge barrier that stuck in the way. And so instead of God doing something to me to make me feel like I was less than or I was being punished, God was doing something for me. So whatever experience I was having, it wasn't to punish me, but it was to help me gain experience and grow and learn. And as difficult as those moments were, if I accepted them as a gift from God instead of a punishment from God, changing that vantage point helped me to embrace the process of trials and difficult times. And now I always pray for other addicts that are still suffering. I pray for a disruption in their life, that they might be disrupted enough that their status quo isn't good enough, or it's not working for them, where they have to kind of come and seek help. So the disruptions that I have in my life currently and in the past, and I'll have more in the future, are ways that it helps me turn to God and rely on him and trust him more, rather than being angry or feeling rejected by God like I used to. And one of the great lessons that I learned as well in embracing my process, my journey, is I had somebody pray with me. This was up at that men's retreat. He prayed with me, and in the prayer, he blessed me that I would be able to work my recovery as earnestly as I worked my addiction. Meaning, if I used all the time, effort, energy, money in my recovery efforts as I do in my addiction, I'm going to be okay. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And I thought, no, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think I engage in addict stuff that much. It's just an occasional thing here or there. But as I stopped and reflected on that, I realized my addiction efforts were a part-time to maybe a full-time job. And so I said, well, if my recovery is a part-time to a full-time job, then I think I'm probably going to be okay. And so that's when I fully jumped in, and I did individual counseling. I did couples counseling. I did group therapy. I did a 12-step. And fully jumped in, and it was kind of a part-time job, sometimes a full-time job at times. And I knew that was just to help kind of get me past some of the barriers that I was at. And then maybe some things can kind of go away. It doesn't have to be as intense. But the funny thing about that recovery process for me was, because of the change that it had in me, because of the process of me changing and then seeing others changed, gave me huge hope, and it changed my life. And I wanted to share that more and more with other people. And so becoming a sponsor, I was able to do that. And that brought me so much joy and satisfaction. I really enjoyed that. And then, like the intro said, I felt like I was called from God that, hey, you need to do this more. And I said, okay, what does that look like? What do I need to do? And eventually my call was to go back to school and change my job. And so that's been a grateful thing, so I can stay engaged in the recovery process. And so, not everybody has to do that, right? Like, you don't have to do a podcast like Justin is doing. You don't have to change your career for recovery. That's not the only way to do your recovery. But the idea is I need to stay actively engaged in my own recovery process. whatever that looks like. There's something that I have to do on a daily basis. I need to honor where I'm at by doing that. And I also need to respect those that have forgiven me and loved me along the way by doing that. I feel like that's kind of a gentle obligation or gentle nudge to kind of keep me going. And so just being able to embrace that part of my journey is, yeah, this is a lifelong thing for me. It doesn't mean that there's not always this compulsion, there's not always this pull where you can feel like you can never get out from under it. But I have the tools and the resources now that I can be in a better place. But I also don't feel like I'm going to fully abandon everything that I've learned and grown and appreciated. I have guys that I've talked to. They get some good sobriety and feel pretty good, feel pretty confident, and then they go on a vacation, and then it all blows up in their face. And so when they talk to me, I say, "Did you take a vacation from recovery?" And they're like, "Yes." And I said, "Just because you go on a vacation doesn't mean you can take a vacation from recovery. You still have to engage in that." And so, yeah, we just can't rest on our laurels with that. And so I've appreciated the journey, and it's something that brings me joy. It's something that brings me happiness, and I thoroughly appreciate working steps 10, 11, and 12, basically on a daily basis, sometimes formally, sometimes informally. But just a quick story. Last night, I came home, and my wife was talking to me. It was a long day. In the beginning of the day, I bought some protein powder from a doctor, and it was pretty expensive. And then after I purchased it, I realized it was just 14 servings for like $75. And I'm like, oh, and I had so much shame about that, because it was just, I felt like I was duped, right? Like I know my doctor's trying to help me out, but that just 14 servings for $75 seems wrong. And so I come home, and my wife sees that. She's like, "Oh, did you get that? Yeah. How much was it? $75. She's like, "Did you see it was only 14 servings?" And just a wave of shame hit me. Right. And I'm just like, yes. And so she's like, "Well, it better do the dishes, and it better make you breakfast and all that kind of stuff too." Right. But that just kind of added to my shame. And so I just kind of sat there in silence, and my wife, and her love and patience, just sat there kind of looking at me. And then I looked back at her, and I'm like, "What?" And she said, "Did you hear me?" And I said, "Yeah." And I just said, "Well, I don't want to talk about it right now." And she's like, "Okay." And then she goes upstairs to get ready for bed. I come up a little bit later, and then laying in bed for a little while, I'm like, I got to do some step 10 work. And so I said, "Hey, I'm sorry for being a jerk. That I shouldn't have treated you that way. I shouldn't have acted that way. I just had a ton of shame come up for me, and just felt kind of stupid for buying that." And so, like, those little small moments, I feel like are so good for me, and hopefully my wife appreciates them. Hopefully not the jerk part, but just being able to work step 10 and tell her that, "Hey, I'm sorry. It wasn't anything you did or said. It was shame coming up for me, and that's something that I still have to work on." But then we were able to connect and be in a better place. And so I'm forever grateful for the steps and being able to use that. So that's just another part of kind of embracing the process for me, that's just kind of how things are going to be. There's going to be ruptures in life. And my goal is, instead of walking away from it and isolating, which I used to do in my addiction, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to make reparations. I'm going to be accountable. I'm going to own my mistakes, and I'm going to ask for forgiveness. I'm going to apologize. I want to shift things up that way. And recovery has felt so much better. I remember 9 years ago, when my first couples session with my wife, I said to him, "All I feel is anger or like sadness. And I don't like feeling either one of those feelings all the time. So I like to just numb out. And he's like, do you know there's more feelings than just those two? And I said, yeah, but I don't know if I've experienced them. And so stepping into recovery, I found happiness. I found joy. I found excitement. I found things to look forward to. I can wake up in the morning with a sense of just love of life and excitement to enjoy the day, instead of just dread of when's the next temptation going to hit? When's the next trigger going to hit? There's a part in the white book that talks about how instead of slowly backing away from our hell, we need to turn and run towards our heaven. And so again, that was another kind of change or vantage point for me, that I can't just slowly back away from all my wrongs and in fear, hope that they don't come and get me. But instead, I got to turn and I got to run towards my goals, the things that are working for me, doing my dailies, doing my recovery work, reaching out and connecting with other men. That was always a hard thing for me to do. But being able to step into that and find gratitude and help and appreciation in the journey has made a huge difference for me. Yeah, just one other example that I'd like to kind of compare it to. One of the things that one of the hobbies that I started doing more and more in my recovery is I found a love of gardening and yard work. And a couple years ago, we had a sleepover with some of my nieces and nephews, and they were out sleeping on the trampoline. And then I came out early in the morning, and I was watering my garden. We have a big berry garden: raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, and I was just watering that sitting down. And some of my nieces and nephews woke up and they said, "Hey, are you having your morning cup of coffee?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am. This kind of is my morning cup of coffee. Like, I just enjoy sitting there in the morning sun watering, and then nothing tastes as good as a warm sun ripened blackberry or raspberry right off the bush." But in appreciating the process and embracing the process, planting a garden is rough. It takes a lot of time and care to plant, fertilize, water, nurture, take care of those plants. There's some frustration. We have an apricot tree right now that we just planted, and it seems to be dying despite all of our best efforts. And so that's aggravating. But being able to go through the process of planting and watching the plants grow and then produce fruit, it's a long process. It takes time. It takes weeks and months. But being able to enjoy just your own fruits and vegetables that you've produced have been great. And in my recovery process, in my journey, being able to just see some of the fruits of my labor, in the sense of how my kids have changed and grown, and how they've I believe they view me differently and love me in a different way, because I don't have a short fuse or short temper like I used to in my addiction. I'm more mellow, I'm more calm, and I don't take a vacation from my recovery when we go on vacation. And so vacations seem to go smoother and better as well. And I'm just grateful every day for the recovery process and enjoying that process, to be able to have that change in attitude and relationship with my family and with my God and with myself. And so with that, I'll take another 24.
Thank you so much, Josh. Great insights, great experience, strength, and hope. Really appreciate you sharing that with us. A reminder to our live audience, if you have questions for Josh, please type them in the Q&A link at the bottom of the Zoom window. Looks like two speech bubbles over the top of each other. We'll get to those questions as they come in. I've also written down a few questions that we'll get to here. Josh, one of the early on in your share, you shared a quote by Maya Angelou, I believe it was: "When I knew better, I did better."
Yeah.
That goes along with a concept that I thought that I had come to my mind. I don't know, it's been probably 8 years ago now, that I entitled the know and do principle. When I know something, I need to do something about it, or it won't do me or anybody else any good. What is your experience with putting into action things that you learn? Why is that important to do that in your experience, to actually get the feet moving after the mouth says the words or the brain hears the words?
Right. So the recovery process, it comes in the body, not just in the mind, right? So part of addiction behaviors, we isolate and we just kind of loop and stay in our own head. And so part of the recovery process is we got to get out of our own head. And so I believe that takes movement and action and kind of feeling it. It's an emotional felt sense in the body. So we can plan and have great goals, but until we take that first step, we don't really feel it or notice it, or it doesn't really change us. And so being able to make those steps, make those efforts, and to start to do is key. And if we're hesitant on it, if we're procrastinating or we're having a hard time with it, then we got to explore what's going on. What's this block? What's impeding me from doing it? Is it a character defect? Is it my shame? What's going on with that, so that we can then know a little more, so that we can step in and do. But yeah, the proof is in the pudding, as they say, right? Like being able to step into that and do it is helpful. I had a guy tell me once that the pattern is supposed to be ready, aim, fire, but sometimes we get so stuck in the ready part, or the aim part, that we never fire. So he says sometimes we just need a ready, fire, aim. And so part of it is we just need to start doing. And as we do that, I think we know more, and then we can course correct along the way as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh. And I love that concept: ready, fire, aim. And then if I'm a little bit off target, I can adjust that aim and fire again. I'm taking action though and moving towards it. And I appreciate that. Got a question that came in from Wayne in our live audience. Wayne says, "How did you turn punishment into gifts?" And I believe that's in relationship to the process that you took in stepping into God and seeing God as a punishing God initially, and then seeing the gifts from it. How did you go through that process?
So yeah, a lot of it was just a lot of practice, taking a lot of opportunities that just felt like they were punishing to me. And then I would be angry, I'd be miserable, I'd be vengeful at God. And after going over this several times, I kind of had the thought, like, how is this working for me? And I said, not very good. So like, there's got to be a different option or a different way. I wish I could just not have any of these problems or not have any of these things happen to me, but that's not going to happen. So what can I do about it? And I felt like I just need to shift my attitude. So how can I embrace these things as a gift? That this is a gift saying, hey, there's a wound here, or there's a problem here, or there's an issue here. So this is a gift that's being exposed to you for you to work on and get better and have some solutions on. And so that talk that I heard where the guy said, I felt like everything was being done to me. Instead, he shifted that and said everything was being done for me. So instead of a punishment, this is being done for me. Okay, how can I step back and see that process of how is this going to take me in a journey to do better? And so it was just being able to kind of have that vantage point shift and kind of appreciate these difficult times as gifts and try to learn from them instead of just push back, because that was keeping me stuck.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I'd like to maybe dig a little bit deeper on that. Can you think of a specific time in your early recovery, in that early process of that shift happening? Can you think of a specific incident that, hey, this feels like a punishment. How can I look at it as a gift? How can I look at it as an opportunity instead? Do you have any of those instances in mind that you're willing to share?
Yeah. So there's one specific thing. I had some good sobriety. Me and my wife were kind of in a good spot. Felt like things were going well between us. But she said that she had a thought or a feeling that I needed to be out of the house for 3 days. And I'm like, why? Did I cross a boundary? What happened? And she's like, I just feel like you need to take some time and kind of find yourself. And so I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But okay. And so and it was 10 o'clock PM, and it was on like a November night. I remember because I left and it was starting to snow, and I'm like, I don't really know where to go or what to do. Maybe I'm just going to stay in my car and try to just sleep in my car. And then I said, and part of me was saying, my wife's wrong, she's out of line, and I'm just going to punish her by sleeping in my car. And if I freeze to death, then that's on her, right? And then again, I'm like, no, that's not the best way to think about it. That's not what I should actually do. What should I do different? What would recovery behavior look like? And that was, I got to call somebody. I need some help. I'm in trouble. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. So I called a guy from one of my groups, and he met me at a Village Inn to eat and talk. And it was a beautiful moment to be able to be with him. And so that turned into a gift instead of this punishment. And then about midnight, he's like, what are you going to do where are you going to stay tonight? And I said, I don't really know where or what I'm going to do. And he's like, well, let me go get a hotel room for you. And so he drove down to a hotel room with me, booked the hotel. And then he walked in, he saw the TV there, and he's like, I don't want you to get into trouble, so we're getting rid of this TV. And so went and talked to the lady at the front desk and said, hey, can you take this TV out of his room? And she's like, well, it's bolted on to the dresser. And he's like, well, get somebody down here to unbolt it, because I'm not leaving until the TV's out of his room. And so that was a beautiful moment. And then the next 2 nights, I had to find different places to stay. And I was pendulating. I was going back and forth between being angry at God because why did I get kicked out? I was being angry at my wife. Why did she feel like I was supposed to get kicked out? To how can I just take this and learn from it and grow from it and use this as just a test to see how I do. And so in those 3 days, I had a lot of back and forth on that. And I think it was a perfect time for me on that third day. I kind of just accepted, I just need to be open and I just need to be okay. And no matter what happens, I think I'm going to be all right. I can handle it. I have tools. I have people I can contact, and I don't have to just be angry at my wife or at God. And so that was a huge shift for me, and just taking things as gifts instead of as a punishment.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. All right. We do have a question come in from an anonymous attendee. This person says, I loved your share today. I love seeing this as a whole life program. I looked on the SAL site, and it appears it's for men only that are sex addicts, and the women info is for partners and wives. Is this a male addiction only in this program? Maybe I'm missing something. So Josh, maybe take a second and teach us a little bit about what SAL is, and talk a little bit to that question, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So SAL is a 12-step program. It uses the SA Sexaholics Anonymous White Book. It uses the AA Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. And then SAL has actually written their own book with member shares in it of both the addict and the betrayed. And one thing that kind of separates SAL a little bit from maybe SA is they are men-only groups or female-only groups, and to the point, yeah, most of them are, the male is the addict and the female is the betrayed. We know that there's other issues out there, that there are females that are addicts and that there are men that are betrayed. and we've attempted a couple of those meetings, but they just haven't quite stuck yet. But we know that that's an issue, and it seems to be more of a growing issue. And so at some point, I assume there'll be exclusive meetings for female addicts and male betrayed. In the meantime, I think therapy is a really good place to start with that.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. And to this anonymous attendee, if you are a female and you think, hey, this might be a program that looks good for me, please send an email there and say, hey, let's get a female meeting started, and be willing to serve in that, because that's something that is definitely out there. We all know that sex addiction is not a male only thing. Thank you for your share, Josh, on that, and thank you for your question on that, anonymous attendee. All right, next question. We have another question came in from Wayne. Wayne says, hey, do you mind talking a little bit more about running towards heaven, that concept of running towards heaven?
Yeah. So, again, part of that is embracing the process and maybe shifting your vantage point a little bit. Because if we look at the destination down the road of, hey, that's when I'm going to arrive, that's sobriety, that's recovery, that's when I feel like I'll have it all put together, and then all we see from where we're at to that end is landmines and barbed wire and obstacle courses and all kinds of terrible tragedies. That's kind of how I view of slowly backing away from hell, is we just see, hey, here's all the problems that I got to try to avoid or run away from or deal with in some degree. But instead, if we can shift the vantage point and say, hey, what's a path that I can take? How can I go to my destination in a healthy, productive way? Like, yeah, I still have to deal with the landmines. I still have to deal with those things. But instead of being so terrified and worried about them, knowing, hey, I have tools, I have resources, I have people that I can contact. I have maybe an expert that can, get rid of landmines for me, so I don't have to be the only expert or feel like it's all on me. I can call other people in to kind of help me out. And so then I feel like there's more of a path to run towards heaven. There's more of a path to have success, where it doesn't feel like all there are obstacles and how am I ever going to do it? Especially when I've tried dozens of times or hundreds of times to stop. If all I see is those landmines and barbed wire, then yeah, there's not much hope in that process.
Thanks for that imagery. That really helps out. I really, really like that. One of the concepts you talked about, Josh, was no vacation while on vacation. I don't take vacation from recovery just because I go on vacation with my family to Disneyland or wherever I'm going. And I've seen that crop up in my own life, and I've seen it crop up in sponsees' lives over and over and over again. Tell me a little bit about how you stay on the path of recovery while on vacation. What are some of the things you do to ensure that stays how it is?
Yeah, so I think step 10 is a huge thing there, where if I do lose my temper, or if I do get dysregulated, or if there are triggers, I'm still able to call and talk to people. I'm still able to use my tools. I still engage in my dailies when I'm away, and I still can talk. Me and my wife are in a place that I can talk pretty openly with her about it. So just for another example, we went to Bear Lake about a month ago, and it was the lake's cold right now, and there weren't a whole lot of people there. It was kind of a cloudy day, and so we kind of had a huge section of beach to ourselves, and we were kind of just enjoying it. And then about 3:30 in the afternoon, these two huge vans pulled up and loud music blasting and everything. And they actually pulled up pretty close to us. And I'm like, hey, there's a whole lot of beach over there. You don't need to be that close. But needlessly, they came right there. And then when the van doors opened up, it was a whole bunch of young women, like 25 young women. And so my wife comes over to me, and she just asked me, she says, "Are you okay?" And so part of what she was asking for, are you okay? Are you going to be triggered? Is that going to be a problem? But also what she was asking for too is, am I okay? Like, because these are potential triggers, I want to make sure that you're okay so that I'm okay. And if you can say, yeah, I got this, it's okay, then she doesn't have to go into kind of fight or flight or anxiety about it. Is it going to be a problem? And so I was able to just turn my chair, focus on my kids, and not have that be a distraction. And maybe earlier in my recovery would have had to pack up and leave, but I was in a place that I was okay with that. I don't have to fear those landmines, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, those landmines go off all. Life is a trigger, is what one of my friends says all the time.
Right.
Life is a trigger. I have to learn how to live in life. All
That's
right.
true.
Another question from an anonymous attendee. Would you mind going over what your dailies look like? You know, what your morning routine, your daily process looks like?
Yeah. So, and there can always be improvements. And so that's part of the fun of enjoying the process, right? Or embracing the process. Um, Early on in my recovery efforts, I had a list of 12 dailies up on my wall. They were written on a 3x5 card, and they were kind of tiered off. I think I had like 3 tiers. So the first two was I had to pray and I had to reach out. So I had to make sure I had to do each of those every single day. And then if I had extra time or if I needed some extra help, I could kind of tap into my other dailies, which were, like attend an extra meeting, read scriptures, engage in being present or active with my kids, physical exercise. So different things like that. So I had this list of dailies that was always present kind of in front of me. And so part of my morning routine, um, uh, is being able to get up, have a prayer to God, and just bless my efforts for the day and help me out with what I need for the day, and being able to just have touch bases with God. And then my wife usually goes to the gym in the morning. And so a lot of it is being with my kids and getting them either ready for school or prep for the day. And then coming into work, I'm able to kind of sit down and either do some journaling, do some recovery reading. Meditation has been really good for me. Listening to some uplifting music has been good for me. So being able to engage in those types of things, and part of it too is doing something different. So part of the addiction is we chase dopamine, and so dopamine wants bigger, better, more, and different. And so a lot of times we just say dopamine is bad, because if we're chasing it in lust or in our addiction, it is. But dopamine can also be beneficial and good. It can be a place of creativity. So if I'm chasing dopamine in a healthy way, I change up my dailies. I do bigger, better, more, and different in a healthy way with my daily. So it gives me something to look forward to, and something that's a change where it's not just this boring daily grind, right? I see the sun rising in the exact same place all the time, but I change the vantage point on that.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. All right, I know you've got an appointment here at the top of the hour, so we'll start wrapping up here. Before I go into closing reading and we close out with the step 3 prayer, do you have any other final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, my thought is just it's possible. There's hope. So wherever you're at, trauma is what we're fighting, is because whether we have trauma and that became our addiction, or whether because of our addiction now we're experiencing trauma, we're all kind of stuck in trauma in this process. And so trauma keeps us stuck. Trauma makes us feel like we don't have a choice. And so being able to have some hope and get out of that is there is a choice, and we have to be able to ready, fire, aim to some degree. Like I have to be able to make a choice and start moving forward in that choice. And then if it's the wrong choice, if it's not the right path, I can course correct. But just staying stuck, staying paralyzed is going to keep that trauma increase and is going to keep you stuck in shame. And so just start making some efforts, baby steps. We're looking for, if you read Atomic Habits, he talks about a 1 degree shift. We're not looking to do a 180 because that's not sustainable. We're looking for consistency, not intensity.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. Appreciate that. That was a really great RECO12 weekly speaker meeting. If we didn't get to your question, or if you have other questions, please consider joining our WhatsApp community by sending an email to RECO12pod@gmail.com. That's RECO12pod@gmail.com, and join in our community and ask those questions and answer others' questions that may come up. If you're inspired and want to share something of your insights in a 12-step type share, please go to the RECO12 Shares Speak Pipe link and record your 3 to 4 minute share there. I've put that in the chat a couple times and it will be in the show notes of the meeting. If you have not yet rated and reviewed the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please consider going to do so now. It's a great way to help us work our 12th step and for you to work your 12th step in sharing this message with others. I invite the audience to come back next week when we will have the privilege of hearing from one of RECO12's favorites, Nikki M., who will be speaking on the topic of See Where Religious People Are Right. And I look forward to hearing from her. As always, I anticipate that she will bring the fire. Now, let's launch off into the rest of our day with the step 3 prayer. Josh, are you able to say that for us?
Yeah, I can do that. Let me just get it called up here real quick.
You got it.
All right. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. Remember, everybody, there's one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching